Joining us is Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer out of San Francisco, and also Jason Unruhe, a political commentator from Ontario. Gentlemen, welcome. Scott, if I can start with you, I just can't help but make a comparison between the situation in Iraq, where you had the U.S. trained Iraqi army that collapsed in the face of Daesh, and the situation in Afghanistan, where you have a US-trained Afghan army that, it's like deja vu. We're seeing how the Afghan army is performing. I'm not saying it's going to collapse in the face of the Taliban military, other terrorist groups that have emerged in Afghanistan. Is that a possibility?
Oh, without a doubt. You are witnessing a resurgence of tribalism. And I think your instincts are exactly right. The standing army of Afghanistan has got to find its moral center of gravity, its spiritual center of gravity, to define who it is and why they are putting their lives on the line, why they are standing with a weapon to defend their country, their people, their tribe, their culture, whatever it is. They have to find, to define themselves, what they're standing against. And if they're unable to do that, they will sell their weapon and run, or they will be and raise their arms and join the conquering side. And then it becomes a question of, are we going to witness a renewed Taliban or other groups that ascend, that are going to engage in a merciless revenge, a merciless agenda of retribution, of payback, of murder, torture for 20 years of siding with or being on the part of the Americans? Or are they going to behave nobly and perhaps compassionately with mercy to say, let us be one country, let us be one people, let us be one government? That's yet to be seen. But if it descends into savagery, then you're think the rise also of mercenary forces from other countries being brought in and hired and contracted to fight one tribe against another, one region against another. So this could end very, very badly, in a very, very savage and ugly way, without the intervention of superior great nations like Iran, like Russia, like perhaps China, stepping in to say we want to aid and help the new Afghanistan and finding diplomatic solutions to replace the violence of the sword and the gun.
Right. Jason, we are seeing a rise in terrorist groups in Afghanistan. Is it fair to say that the States will use, or the Pentagon will use, these proxy groups to destabilize the country after it leaves the Afghanistan?
I think that's a very likely case, that if the Taliban were to come to power with the withdrawal of Western forces from the country, I think it's very likely that they would end up being another proxy force, the same as what we're seeing in Syria right now with the al-Nusra Front, the Kurds, etc. I think that definitely the U.S. has not fully acknowledged that this is a war that they cannot win. I think this is one that they figured that they cannot physically win with their own military, that they just can't capture. The people are not fully willing to stand beside the U.S. forces at this time. They want to stand with their own people, even if it is a dismal choice such as the Taliban. It should not really be surprising. Afghanistan has a very long history of doing so. But I think once the Taliban is in power, the U.S. will try to undermine. We'll try to undermine it if there is some kind of deal between the Afghan government and the Taliban. I think that the U.S. will try to undermine it there. I think that in a manner of speaking, conventional war inside the country is not going to work. I think that is something that's going to be left up to military contractors whose actions don't get recorded. Proxy the U.S. can claim that they don't have control over. They're just supporting on the side, and those are not responsible for what they do. But I think it's very likely that what we're going to see is definitely an attempt at destabilization, the same way that we're seeing in many other Middle Eastern countries right now.
Scott, in a minute, if you can, why would the United States want to, leave security in a country that has a very vast, long border with the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Well, there's a schizophrenia associated with America's military and foreign policy that has been built up on lies since 9/11. So there is no rationality to the policies of the West, and it's very sad. It's very schizophrenic. So you're going to witness everything that the United States claimed to want to achieve and claimed to defend against is actually been achieved because of the United States policy. The United States forced Iran, Russia, and China to stand together by its militant interventionists. The United States has caused the rejection of itself from all of the Middle East countries that had once looked at the United States with a degree of favor to now seeing it as a nation of liars and murderers and thieves and really war criminals, because you're engaged in destabilization operations. You're engaged now in overthrowing and regime change, and yet you say you are the champion of democracy, human rights, and the personal preferences of people to choose their own leaders. So there is a schizophrenia and a hypocrisy that when the world's nations and the peoples begin to see it and understand it, they reject the United States with a bitter distaste and a revulsion and a very high degree of skepticism and even hostility, because they know that the United States never means the good when they come into a nation. They mean to parasitically bleed it of its resources and then cast it aside at the termination of its operation.
Jason, very similar question, and if you can, in 1 minute, would the United States leave Afghanistan that has a very long border with the Islamic Republic of Iran, which Washington considers as its arch enemy?
Well, I certainly think that they would try. I think that that's certainly the goal, but I don't think it's going to happen in this case. I think that the people of Afghanistan, the objective situation on the ground has certainly made it clear that that's just not going to be the case. I think short of actually bribing the Taliban into being an enemy of Iran, that there's not going to be that kind of situation. So I don't foresee any stability in Afghanistan for quite some time to come. I think that there's still going to be a great deal of military and political struggle in the country for years to come.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank our guest Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer, joining us out of San Francisco, and Jason Unruhe, political commentator from Ontario.